Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 424 already. And today we're going to be looking at specific knife systems. And those are the following: FMA, Medusa, and Piper. This episode, however, is not going to be looking at the negativity or anything of that nature. It's going to be more of a compare and contrast, and how I believe, if you are a knife enthusiast or practitioner, how they can actually benefit you from looking at all three. And that's really how we're going to come across today. Not which one is better or worse, or which one covers. We are actually going to address what they cover as far as a tactic lens and so forth and all that. But we're going to be staying away from the negativity and hope that some folks watching this may want to look into these systems, particularly the FMA community, where the most of us are in. Piper and Medusa are nowhere as big as the FMA community in that. So without further ado, my guests today are Professor Ken, 52 Blocks, and Guru J. What hasn't he done? And we're going to get his lens on that. And the reason why I chose these two, because they've all done all three. So they're going to be able to give some experience, some testimony, and opinion and dialogue regarding all this. If you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. Smash that like button. If you have questions, put them in the comment section, and I promise, as long as they're not politically driven, I will get to them. And here we go. Here they come, folks. Hey guys, how are you doing?
What's going on, brother? How you feeling?
Yeah, I want to appreciate both of you doing this. I'm sure you could have found a plethora of better things to do on a Sunday. It says spending with Dean Franco. So I appreciate you guys doing this and all that.
Appreciate you having us on, man.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm pretty fond of you guys, and I thought this would be kind of nice. We all get along, and we all experience these different systems, and I thought we could all have a nice conversation on these and what resonates with us, why we chose to do them, what we find in them that really attracted us to them, and our findings, and et cetera, and et cetera. But it's funny how this came about, folks. If you're watching, I was training with Ken, and I don't know how we got on the subject, but it just came up. And he had a really, I thought, unique statement in regards to a hierarchy, if you will, of the three that he's done. And I'm going to let Ken take over now and explain that. But that's pretty much what gave the reason of doing the show. I just thought what he mentioned was just so neat and clever. So go ahead, Ken.
So basically, what I was saying was that if you look at the way each system is set up, right, they kind of complement each other like building blocks. Medusa is an awesome system to teach to someone. If you need to learn something right now that you can use right this moment, Medusa is that system because it's uncomplicated, right? It's pretty straight to the point, and it doesn't take a lot in order to get down the very basics of it and to become good at it, right? For an individual who may want to build on that, then the next tier would be FMA, right? Because where Medusa is pretty much working inside the three boxes with regards to the target zones, right? And you got your basic stabs. Now FMA gives you the angles, which gives you a little bit more precision, right? So now Medusa is more gross motor, and the FMA gets a little bit more fine motor, right? You take it the next step, right? This is where you would get into the Piper and Libre area, right? Because now it's specific target selection. These are the super fine motor skills where you're hitting the eye or the carotid artery or, with the different stabs or whatever the case. So now your targets are more pinpoint precise. You have to be more accurate. So you go from the gross motor to the slightly more fine-tuned to the extremely fine-tuned. And that's how those build on each other. Medusa gives you the groundwork, shows you put the pointy end in the guy, and you hold the blunt end to yourself. Boom. FMA gives you the angles, so now you can start understanding range, distance a little better, and you start to strategize more. And then Piper and Libre are where you get to that pinpoint accuracy.
Yeah, again, I thought it was just really neat how you done that. When I look at we're going to get into this deeper, of course, but when I look at, Piper is what you mentioned, far as some of the pinpointing, but the way of movement and the alignment of hip and shoulder and the distractions and all that. But much to what you're saying, so Guru Jay, what do you think of what do you think of Ken's breakdown in that?
Yeah, I think it's. I agree with what Professor's saying. Um, my first reaction to this, right? So I'm sort of processing as you guys are speaking. I think from my perspective, it's slightly different, guys. I think that, and I think a lot of it is colored by two things, right? Biggest influence for me has always been over the last several decades has been Guru Burton, and a lot of what he sort of imparted to me over the course of the last you know several decades was really um, more along the lines of making sure that what you're doing, you're pressure testing, and that there's this whole concept of progressive resistance. So I always looked at things in the light of ranges. So because of my physicality, I'm like I was telling you guys the last time, I'm always the smallest guy in the room. So there's certain ranges that are predisposed to, you know, I think my physicality. So I like executing at long range. Um, I don't like middle range. I like getting into close range, clinch in particular. And that was, again, like I was saying, heavily influenced by, Gerber's teachings. Um, so if you sort of look at the FMA teachings, and I'm just talking about this in generalities, guys, and then, Medusa and Piper. For me, the thing that appealed to me about Medusa was the whole shock latch and,
Mhm.
stab concept. But that's essentially you know, the overlay of what Guru Burton had imparted to me too, right? So because I was always going to be the smallest guy in the room, getting to clinch range, and getting an overhook, underhook, fouling that opponent's weapon arm hand was always the best approach for me. Um, so that sort of resonated to me, and if the Medusa system itself sort of just fit nicely into all of the prior learnings. The thing I like about Piper is the close range and um, the off balancing, the deceptiveness of the movement. But a lot of it is happening at this close range, clinch range, sort of hybrid. Um, and then the FMA learnings, they're a lot more expansive. They touch on all of the different ranges. So for me, it was always really more of how do you plug the holes with the different systems, sort of the whole JKD mentality, right? Learn as much as you can, figure out what works for you, and then, um, you know, maybe not jettison the rest, but sort of deprioritize the rest, right? But anyway, hope that answers the question.
No, no, no. I think you
Uh,
did very well, and I'm just going to give a quick hello to guys that are watching. And we got a bunch here already. That edge, that sharp 22 brings them out. All right, we got Joel, we got Brett, we got Ryan, BMA, Brian Canada, Renee. Always fun to have Renee here. And all right, guys. Yes, if you're watching, please tell you smash that like button. If you got questions, put them in there. What about Hey, brother Mike Raymond. All right, here he is, the founder himself, Medusa, jumping in. All right, let's look at the difficulty. And and it's going to kind of parallel what Ken was saying. I mean, obviously, we could look at a bunch of this. We could look at difficulty. We could look at from a tactic, and which we are going to do when we get into this deeper. Tactics versus drills. I mean, ranges. Is it a dueling? Is it the offense, the defense, and all that stuff we're going to get into, which is all relevant. But as far as difficulty, from my own personal experience, again, just me, I'm not talking as far as everybody, you know, Medusa is as man, it is as direct as you can get. I mean, you know, you guys hit the the nail on the head. I mean, if you had somebody you only had an hour with them, I'm giving them Medusa. I mean, it is just that direct, and I think it excels in that regard, and among other aspects too. You know, FMA, that comprehensiveness. You know, it's angles of attack, it's slashes, it's footwork, there's offense, defense, there's multitude of weapons and configurations and dueling and that, and you know, just big umbrella. Um, when I look at difficult Piper was definitely the most difficult as far as embracing the movement. Not that you had to do that. I mean, you don't really have to embrace the African movement to be effective at Piper. I mean, you can basically come with Piper and just and you'll be fine. I chose to try and embrace it because I really wanted to understand as far as my going into the system and my journey. I'm not saying it's necessary to extract tactics from Piper and be effective. I just chose to do that. But by doing that, though, there were some aspects and elements, I don't know, difficulty is the right word, that I hadn't seen before. Thus, I had to put more attention and time into it, where some of the others I didn't. And that's not good, bad, or indifferent. I think being simple and direct when your life is on the line, how do you beat Medusa? I mean, you know, and so that's yeah, and Mike Raymond just basically, in short, just in summation, just basically said what I said in one sentence. You know, Medusa is self-preservation, FMA is self-protection. You know, that's definitely a way of looking at it. I mean, no doubt. And so that's just my 2 cents. But we're going to go deeper into all this stuff. But as far as the difficulty lens, if you will, um, I found Piper like, man, I got to work on this. You know, this is not just coming like there. What do you guys thought on that? If you were to look at it from a level of competence or achieved competence, Ken.
Right. So I look at it like this, right? And then we're gonna go into a different place a little bit. So looking at how knife violence happens inside the prison system, right? The ambush, that's Medusa, right? Boom. And you rush the guy, you hit him, boom, you shock him, you stab him up real good, get the hell out of Dodge, right? Boom. And that's brutal, it's simple, it's perfect. Again, if a person doesn't have a lot of time to train, Medusa is the go-to, right? And that's what a lot of people are used to when they think of prison violence, right? But there's another side of that where individuals do what's called gun to gun, right? And that doesn't work in that situation right there. It may be a situation where you got two different organizations. There's a problem between two people in those different organizations, and instead of everybody going to war, it's like, all right, you two guys are going to get knives and go over here. So now that isn't the best thing for that situation because it's a duel, right? Boom. And this is where the understanding of angles and targeting comes into play, right? Because now it's about who's the better man, right? You may go up to the bathhouse, may find a corner somewhere where the COs can't see. So now you trying to rush the dude, you might be playing because it's just like you rush and come in, the guy hits you or something like that. It's a bad look, right? For the ambush, the unsuspecting person, Medusa is the rock, right? Boom. If you're in a duel, you need a little bit more, right? So, like I said, FMA gives you that foundation. Medusa is the building block. That's the foundation, right? This is the basic boom. This is how you do that. Then the FMA, right? Now you start understanding angles, right? If somebody charges, I can step offline and do this. If somebody does this, I can do that. This is how I counter this attack right here, right? Without getting into, because like Mike said about the self perfection part, right? That's the art side of FMA, right? But
Absolutely.
it comes out of combat. So there's a combat side of that too, right? So without getting into the flowery part of it, right? The very bare bones basic counters to stop the guy from putting the end of his knife in you, and then you can put your knife in him, right? And then again, when you go into the higher level, like the more skilled knife fighters, right? Now this is when you get into the I'm gonna hit you in your neck, right? I'm gonna parry and stab you in the neck. I'm gonna hit you in your eye to make you get a reaction out of you, and then I'm gonna stab you somewhere else, right? Boom, and that's that whole Piper Libre thing right there, right? Because those two systems are very similar, right? So this is where you get that. So this again, like I said, they build on each other, and you're right as far as the intricacy of each or the degree of difficulty with each, right? Medusa, boom, it's not as difficult. However, you still got to make sure that you don't trip and fall on your own knife, right? But it's effective, right? So you run in, boom, you grab the dude, you can hold on to it and make sure you don't trip and fall, and you stab, stab, stab until you get the job done, right? Again, if you want to know, all right, what happens? Like, I always think of in terms of Medusa is I was first, right? Something was going on, and I managed to access my weapon before you got a chance to access yours. I got to hit you, shock you before you got an opportunity to understand what was going on, and then I put the knife in you, right? So I'm moving and doing what I need to do before you get the opportunity to react to whatever it is I'm doing, right? But what happens when you're not first? Now I'm the one doing the reacting, right? See, and this is where that the footstep, the triangle footwork, and all of that from Pakiti Church comes in good, right? Because it shows you how to get offline. The dude stabs you, take the first step, and how to move so you don't take the second and the third step, right? Boom. And then what to do? How do you maximize that angle, right? And again, this is where they go together because you can use that footwork to get out the way and then use that same shot, latch, and stab from Medusa to maximize the fact that you got offline, right? Boom. And then we take it up another notch, right? As far as difficulty, this is the Piper Libre, right? All right, so now we're in front of each other, right? You got your knife, I got my knife, right? I feint here, I do a shimmer something here, and then I hit you in your eye to make you bring your hands up so I can get you in the lung, right? Boom. So, again, but that's with any training, you always start out with the basics, and as you progress, things become more difficult until they become easy, right?
Yeah.
That's my view on it.
No, I think you're right. Like Nevers, when I went deep into Piper, it really made my FMA better. It made it really did. I can't, um, it just made my movement and my fakes, my distractions, all those things, those tactics that are in Piper, I think it improved upon it. And there can be an argument vice versa too. You know what I mean? Jay, far as same thing to you, far as the lens of difficulty, if there was one for you, what would it be?
Yeah, I agree with everything Professor's saying. I think that, I like the simplicity and the directness of the Medusa system. I think that I agree with you also, Master Dean, that I struggled with the conversion to Piper because the movements, but more so the mindset, intention was different, from all the past learnings. So I think one of the things that one of my other big influences in my life, Michael Janet actually tried to impart to me was, you know, there's physicality, there's mindset, and then there's skill set, right? And as you progress through life, there's sort of a different weighting to each of those categories that you have. I don't, I'm going to be the first to admit, I don't have Professor's physicality. So, I'm learning 52 from him, and it's just an incredible blessing. But he's helping me to sort of, work through all of the techniques and make it work for myself. But one of the things that I kind of self-realized is that um, as I get older, my strength, my speed, slowing down is just the fact of life, right? So I'm going to be 60 in a couple of days, and it's like I can't do things that I used to be able to do when I was 45 or even 55. But you compensate by improvement in skill sets, but also changing in mindset. So that's what really resonated with me in terms of what Professor was speaking to just now. It's the directness, right? And it's in large part the mindset aspects of it that you can use to sort of compensate for the physical deficiencies that you ultimately end up with as you age, right? So that's what I'm finding really, you know, quite the blessing with the exposure to both Medusa and Piper. It's like Professor was saying, it's less, of a complete art. It's a system, right? With a sole purpose of being able to um, use the knife as a tool, for offensive or defensive purposes. But I hope that answered the question,
No, no,
Master.
no, no. Yeah, no, no, it did. And yeah, no, thank you. I'm just going to catch up here on the comments, guys, just seeing if I missed anything as far as questions and what have you. We got Jaime here. All right. Um, I'm going to get that question, Brad. I will. Medusa also is kind of attack. You should train your knife defense. Yeah, I think that's absolutely legit. Um, is what we must. Yeah, the sewing machine. You might want to train it. It's heavily, yeah, and well, Jay will tell you, and Blake Tannigan. Sewing machine 101. All right, my daughter. Let me see here. What? Okay. My daughter totally had the warrior spirit. We invigorated by Medusa. How do we spark more interest in women interested in real self protection and blade systems? Episodes like this, Joel, I believe, just getting the word out there. I mean, I've had, Jay and Mike on. They've been on twice here. Actually, Mike's coming back on. I think that's what we just got to do this and just show the importance from a tactic point of view, why women should be looking at this for self protection. But yeah, much agreed. I think women can absolutely benefit more from this. But we need more pioneers. Yeah, true. And it does suck getting older, Brett. And Joel wants to thank Jay because I need to hear that. All right, all right. Caught up on the comments and the questions. All right. Okay. So,
Hey, Master D, can I
yeah,
make a comment to one of the comments that you're just reading off?
please
I
do.
think, yeah, I think that Medusa, Piper, Libre, to Professor's point, it's a really amazing set of systems for people of smaller stature and women, because number one, you're using the knife principally as an equalizer, right, a force multiplier, and then secondarily, the the concept, the latch concept, as an example, you know, is a way to sort of offset the natural physical benefits that a larger guy would have, say, against a woman. So, and just want to call that out. Yeah.
No, and I agree with you. And I tell you, from a tactic point of view on both, coming from the rear. So think about, if you're a woman, you have a blockade from them coming in. You know what I mean? Let's go reverse grip, for instance, so we can kind of model both Piper and Medusa. I mean, think about that. And what's just a natural biological strike? Think about it. I mean, how much do you need to train a woman to do that? You know what I mean? So I totally agree with you on that. I think those two systems, yeah, if I had a woman come in into me, whether she was comfortable with a knife or another self-defense tool that she'd be more comfortable, whether it be a palm stick, pen, or what have you. But still, if you think about it, it's not. It's You're still going to give them this structure. You know what I mean? As opposed to going here and then going into a fencing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I totally agree with you on that. All right. Here, what I thought we would do is, since we're going to go deeper into the three as far as the compare and contrast, I thought it'd be helpful for us if we kind of identify a metrics, if you will, like as far as what we're going to use as far as compare and contrast. Some of the things I wrote down, of course, tactics versus techniques. When I look at Medusa and Piper, I see a very heavily tactic-based system. When I look at FMA, I see both. Um, Drills. Never got any drills in Piper. And when you look at Medusa, it's a semblance of tactics you're putting together. I don't know. I like to use the word platforms as opposed to drills, but there could be an argument. Offense, defense, dueling, sparring versus the offense is the defense. Certain body types which gravitate to tournament systems we just spoke on as far as women, self-defense lens, ranges, as far as tactics, distractions, and that. Yeah. So FMA being more on the comprehensive aspect, far as what's involved in there. So, what do you guys? Anything you want to add, far as the metrics, before we just dive into FMA? I figured my order was kind of look. We're going to identify FMA, pros, con, whatever. Go into Medusa, and then the Piper, and then we can look at the complementary, how they complement one another. So, as far as metrics, anything you guys would like to add to that before we jump in?
Not right now, no. Not okay.
Okay, if something comes up, just yeah.
Just maybe a little bit of commentary on that one. I mean, you're sort of comparing apples and oranges to some extent, right? Because you look, to your point, Master Dean, you look at FMA, there's such that rich history, right? It goes out pre 1500 dates, and you look at the whole evolution, right, between from Das Pares to the Santa influence, the Grandmaster Raymond Press's influence. There's like such a rich culture just within the last 100 years, right? And there's I'm going to try to paraphrase Grandmaster Mark Wiley. I think he said something in one of his books about there's like as you're learning the whole FMA process, there's the techniques, the demonstration piece. Then you move to sort of the give and take, and then I think the last two categories was like long range, short range integration of the techniques. But there's that long history of all of that development. Plus, you have the cultural and spiritual aspects of it that overlays onto FMA too. So you don't have that, right? I mean, Piper and Medusa, to Professor's point, it's a system to achieve one thing, right? And so it's somewhat different. So just wanted to call that out, right? Because you don't have that completeness that you do.
Comprehensiveness.
Yeah, the comprehensiveness.
I agree. I totally agree with you. And much to your point, like you brought up historical context. I mean, think about that. You know what I mean? Where now and that goes beyond actually historical. I mean, there's actually religious aspects in it, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So yeah. But with all that being said, let's dive into it. FMA. All right, Master Ken. What do you think? What do you FMA? Compare and contrast to the others. What has it done for you? What do you like? Why do you advocate it, and etc.
So first, like what drew me to FMA was the similarity between 52 blocks and FMA, and the similarities between Wing Chun and FMA. Right? Boom. A lot of times I would be doing stuff and people would think that I was doing FMA, and I'm like, nah, I don't study that. And I met the Guro Khalifa Abdul Khalid, and he had wanted to learn Wing Chun. I had wanted to learn Kali, so we did a quick quote. He taught me, I taught him, boom. Right? As far as what it did, it's like it enhanced my footwork, right? Because 52 footwork is you can see the FMA influence in the 52 footwork, right? However, that's going in one direction for the most part, right? Because again, 52 is fighting in closed spaces. But being able to do a lot of the other angles and stuff like that, it helped a lot, man. It didn't understand the angles of attack, right? Because, with the distance, right? Boxing is awesome for distance, right? But when you're using the stick, now it's a whole nother thing, right? Boom. It's being able to navigate that stick and then get around the individual's hand and so on and such like that. So, and the drills with FMA are awesome because you can apply them across the spectrum if you look at them from a certain point of view, right? And I'm gonna give you an example, right? So let's say you took something like the Hoover drill, right? And you could take that and use that to drill Medusa, right? Where the one person would be we go a step further, right? Because we know that Scott Babb did FMA at one point before making Libre, right? And in Libre, there's the 5-pack, right? So the 5-pack is basically what happens when you attack, the individual stops the attack, how do you get around that, right? And there's 5 stages of that. All right, cool. If you come from the perspective with Medusa, right? So I attacked, boom, I went to do the rush in, go to attack, he stopped my hand, and I move his hand out the way, and I can still latch and grab, right? Same thing if we take the Hubert, right? The person is attacking, boom, I'm getting around, and now I can do my latch and do my stab. You see what I'm saying? So again, this is why I said they complement each other, right? It's just a matter of looking at it the right way. You can use the drills from one to help enhance your skill set with the other, right? And then, as Brent Reese said, as far as training against the type of attack that Medusa has, right? So now, if you are an FMA practitioner and you have an understanding of Medusa and you know the effectiveness of Medusa, you say, okay, so how do I stop somebody from being able to do that to me, right? Boom. How do I take this drill and modify it? So in Khalifa used to always say that drills are a laboratory, right? They're where you experiment, they're where you discover, they're where you find out what can work and how you can make it work, right? So FMA provides a lot of drills that, again, like I said, can be applied across spectrum, right? And that's a beautiful thing because you can take those drills and modify them in a way that benefits whatever it is that you're trying to work on and use that to enhance whatever skill set that you're working on, right? So that's probably my biggest takeaway from FMA, right? The fact that the universality of it. You can use it for everything, the angles of attack. You use it with a stick, use it with a sword, use it with a knife, use it with your cell phone, use it with a hand stick. You can use it with almost anything. And you don't have to relearn a whole different set of principles in order to be effective with whatever weapon is in your hand at the time. You can do the same angles and it still works, right? And that's a beautiful thing right there. Its sophistication is its simplicity, and its simplicity is its sophistication. Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna get back to you and definitely piggyback off some of the stuff you're saying. And to me, it's also a mindset. And a lot of FMA guys, unfortunately, no, I don't want to get this misconstrued. Some of them don't look at it from that perspective, and we're gonna get into that. So FMA. Same question for you, Guru Jay.
Yeah, I think Professor touched on a lot of the really relevant points. I really like what he said, though. You need to actually have exposure to what somebody's going to be potentially using against you so that you know how to actually respond accordingly, right?
Yeah.
And unlike Professor, I sort of did the converse, right? FMA was my base platform. And then sort of through the whole JKD expression, you find things that actually works for you to make your art, the more complete piece. I think the commentary that I was going to make is I don't think that there's any one path, guys. I think no matter what your martial arts preference or whatever your system preference is, ultimately, if you put the right mindset, to your point, Master Dean, and the right amount of effort and practice, you ultimately can get to the same place, via different paths, right? But the key is trying to find out what works for your own personal expression.
Absolutely.
And, what might work for, Professor, with his big, 20-inch arms and amazing, intimidating physique is not going to work for me, right? But and that's why what I found really appealing about FMA was the ability, to Professor's point, to use any weapon as sort of like a force multiplier to compensate for the lack of the physical gifts that, like, Professor has.
Yeah, you can't argue that. I mean, the crossover FMA to what you can grab far as environmental or weapons of opportunity. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, whether you grab the stick or frying pan. I mean, the crossover, whether you're seeking blunt or edge, depending on the instrument of choice. But what's your point? Yeah, totally agree.
I'm sorry. One more thing, Master.
Sure.
I think Professor's point in terms of the arts complement each other is spot on too, right? So they're just different expressions of, different expressions, but you got to pick and choose which works for you best.
Based on, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm going to get
from a
into
personal
too,
standpoint.
when we get into the complementary aspect at the end there. In other words, like your past, what are you bringing to the table from your past influence, stature, you know what I mean? I think that all plays, accordingly. I'm just catching up on the comments, guys. Just bear with me. When I cross-trained in Munak's progressive fighting systems, we learned both. Self-perfection is the enhancing your skill set and attributes. Self-preservation is for the protection of life and properties in real life, combative life, and death situations. Absolutely, Alberto. And thanks for jumping in. And we got here, and damn it. Hold on, bear with me. All right, and we got Mike Raymond is saying the main problem with FMA and Piper is that they always train with the both practitioners having their knives out already. Medusa never trains with their knives out first. Okay. And what else? I'm catching up here. Okay, yeah, just to piggyback off you guys as far as FMA, and I'm gonna kind of go out of the box just by all the interviews I've done in FMA discussion, the mentality I see sometimes, and I don't want to come across a negative here, but I have to be honest. And again, folks, don't misconstrue me here. I'm not saying the entire community, far from it. I am saying though, based on evidence, there was some time back, I brought up Piper in FMA discussion, and this is before I knew about Medusa, not to be in there. And I would definitely use Medusa as an example had I known about it. But my post was, hey, folks, I wonder if you guys, something along this verbiage. And I said, hey, have you guys thought about looking at these different knife systems in different countries? And I used Piper, for example, and I think I used a system in Latin America. And some were receptive, but I gotta tell you, there was a good chunk of folks that just weren't, that FMA was the cure all and all that. And I'm bringing this up is because there's a closed mindedness, and I've seen this in the interviews I've done on that, where there's a reluctancy to look at other systems, and it's kind of like this and all that, even though they address other stuff that FMA doesn't do as well or just doesn't do and all that. And obviously there's an argument for vice versa. And so that's upsetting to me because if you want to be the best version of yourself, particularly look from the lens of like self-protection, you know what I mean? To me, you're going to look at anything, which is I've done and continue to do to better your journey. And if you're a teacher, to give what you can the best to your students. So, but I'm telling you, I've seen this. Not making up. I have evidence of this that they're just sometimes they are not receptive. They don't want to see it, and it's unfortunate. And this is why I keep pounding, like posting there, because to get folks to look at some of these different systems and what have you. And unfortunately, I think some are doing it. I think over time I've seen more and more looking at Piper and Medusa and all that. And I think that will continue. Obviously, it's never going to be as big as FMA, and nor should it be, just based on the totality FMA covers and the wide range. And historically speaking, as you mentioned, Guru Jay, there. The other thing, the drills versus tactics. I mean, when we look at Medusa and Piper, they're heavily tactic based, offenses and defense, etc. I think there's an argument why I do like the drills in FMA. I think there's an argument that it's gotten over codified. And why do I say that? I look what happens here where you're drilling, and sometimes the more the drills and all that, and then I look what happens out there. There's a disconnect, and that was really exposed to me, but being under a muck, Tom Sotis, the disconnect and functionality in there, and that. And again, that's not across the board. Again, I'm making an observation on the coverage, I've done and so forth. So just to add a few of those things, and I'm just going to catch up the comments. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So the last comment, right? That right there is a gross misconception right there, right?
What's that?
Not you.
No, I'm trying to find that here.
Right? Okay. A lot of people are under the impression that criminals The I agree. So most people you encounter probably aren't very skilled,
Yeah.
but like hardcore criminals, you'd be surprised at the level of skill that they have, right? Keep in mind that Mike Raymond and Mike and Seth Raymond based Medusa off criminals.
Mm.
Piper is made by criminals, right? Boom. Criminals, hardcore criminals, train hard. You can go online and look on what is that? YouTube, right? And there are videos, surveillance videos of correction officers watching prisoners train other prisoners how to stab with the knife, right? What to do if you're attacked with the knife, right? 52 is made by criminals, right? So don't the biggest mistake that a person can make, right? That a civilian can make, and please take this to heart, man, right? Is to assume that the criminal knows nothing. Because in the prison system, I saw a whole lot of individuals who had black belts and stuff like that get their heads handed to them by dudes that had none of that, right? And a lot of the time, the dudes that run the jail aren't martial artists, man. They're dudes who have that aggression, but they have skill. You got to keep in mind. Nigel February, he said something before. I love this quote, right? He said the only martial artists who are constantly evolving their skill set are criminals, because criminals are the only ones who are always putting their skill set to the test in real situations, right?
That's
So an individual who his livelihood is attacking other people. Remember, man, a hardcore criminal is a predator. Predators hunt, they kill. This is what they do. So he has to make sure that he's skilled at being able to do that.
Yeah.
The worst thing that you can do is assume that he doesn't. That's why one of the four cardinal sins in the assumptions in the VTK system is always assume that the other guy is bigger, stronger, faster, and more skilled than you are. That way, there's no surprises, right? You don't want to be surprised in that way, right? So take it from somebody who used to be in that life, right? The worst thing you could do is assume that the guy attacking you is unskilled, right? Because again, Medusa and Piper are both based on criminal attack, right?
Yeah, well said. I mean, yeah, back to that tactic. It's funny. Like, I just never thought that I would never understand. Like, you just never know. I mean, like, that's just, anyway, I'm just trying to think of anything left out. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Just to reinforce what Professor said, I think that two things. Number one, I think, what Professor said a ways back was that you need to expose yourself, to these kinds of systems or systems that are grounded in, these criminal elements too, because you need to understand how to respond, to that. And the other thing that I think was just super relevant that he just spoke to is this whole mindset thing, right? It's like you can't really underestimate how intention can overcome or compensate for lack of skills, maybe. But I think I agree with what Professor's saying. That's what these guys do all day long.
So they get to
practice this. So
time
highly skilled. Yeah, highly skilled. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have an argument. And the reason why I don't have an argument is because the moment I went deep into Piper and now, like, where this criminal and how that's another thing too with FMA. It's in other words, I look at systems of relevance. Okay, I want to do this. I want to know this. I want to be exposed to this stuff because it's going on this very day. What is going on this very day? Somebody's getting attacked in South Africa, right? I mean, knife, right? Prison systems, right? Latin America. And I'm not saying stuff doesn't go on in the Philippines anymore. I'm not saying that. But I think there's other regional areas where I think, besides the prison systems, of course, that attacks are more relevant. Right? Maybe it could be legal. Maybe they're allowed to carry. In the Philippines, the knife laws are very strict, from what I understand. You know what I mean? That I'm not saying they don't occur anymore. But when I look at like South Africa and parts of Latin America, I mean, they're carrying around machetes. It's like every day, you know what I mean? And so that's something I also look at far as that. The best, I'm just catching up here, folks. They're pounding in comments. I get emotionally attached to drills I love. Uh, okay, no worries. If that's you, that makes. Yeah, folks, another thing too. I mean, this is not about what you should or shouldn't do, or you shouldn't love. I mean, your journey is your journey. Whatever makes you happy. We're just bringing a compare and contrast on different systems, and just to shed some light on folks that maybe are not familiar with some of these, but certainly not to try to stray you or convince you anything otherwise. So yeah, all right, Medusa. So we're going FMA. All right, into Medusa. Guje. You know, I can't say enough of you as a student, a friend. I can't wait till we train together and all that. But um, when I was giving you Medusa, like just saw this. I don't want to say reincarnation and all that, but just the overall excitement in you and just this embracement of this system, and it was pretty noticeable. So I'm going to leave it at that and let you go ahead, Medusa.
Yeah, I think um, it was a really nice sort of revisiting of a lot of the things that I had been exposed to through Guro Burton. I mean, the entries, the latch, the shock. I mean, it was just codified, and
And
it
I
was
don't mean to interrupt. From a CLOT perspective, I'm guessing.
all of the above, right?
Okay.
So there, like for Guru Burton's approach was always, making sure that we sparred and pressure tested and made sure that whatever we were, introducing into our tool set actually worked, right? So CLOT was a huge component of it. Um, his dog brother approaches, his Randy Couture approaches were, I mean, it was basically almost a seamless overlap to what, the Medusa curriculum was. And the thing I liked about it was even, even from a knife standpoint, there was, there was a very illustrisimo flair to it because you're not really passing center line here, right?
Mm.
It's all of these, you know, forehand type of approaches. Um, so maybe that's a stretch, guys. But I
Yeah, I know where you're going
it
with that.
resonated. Yeah, it resonated with me, and I liked the simplicity of it and um, the directness of it.
Mm.
And like I was saying earlier, right, as I'm getting older, the directness of the techniques help to overcompensate or compensate rather for the degradation in the speed and strength.
Mm.
That's what really got me jazzed about it because as we started to introduce this into heavy sparring, it worked, right? And my one of my primary partners um, loved this guy Summit. He's like 240, and he has like arms, just as big as professors. But being able to actually get like an overhook to foul that actual weapon hand is insanely effective, right? Or underhook or whatever the latch technique was. So um, I liked it because it works.
Yeah, I can't argue that, right? It's effective, right? I mean, yeah. Um, all right, Ken, same. Medusa.
I think Medusa is awesome, man. Like it's very bare bones, straight to the point, right? And it's what violence looks like, right? Like real violence. That sudden attack, that sudden violence, that's what it looks like, right? And the whole thing with the shot, the latch,
Mm.
the latch is a tool. It's not just you holding on to the person. You can like if you grab a dude and you pushing them like this, you can gauge range, you can keep them off balance, compromise their structure, and that all the while you're stabbing them, right? That's a knife attack, right? If a person is approaching me to do me bodily harm, and Mike Raymond had said something earlier about how Medusa doesn't start with the knife out. See, that's part of the ambush, right? Because if you have your knife out and you're threatening me or whatever the case, and I parry that and come in and I got you so that your arm is pressed against your body, you can't use your knife, and I'm latched on, I can stab the hell out of you. I get my knife out and I'm right and moving you around as I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, like it's brutal. It's straight to the point. If a person didn't know what the hell was about to happen, if they wake up in the hospital, they'll figure it out. Right?
Yeah, or they'll be told, they'll be told what happened to them, right? Somebody will be. Oh, what happened? Well, by the way, you were. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, I'll just.
Medusa is awesome.
Yeah, I think you guys nail it. Yeah, so what I'm going to add is, but you guys obviously covered it really well. To me, like I've done a lot of FMA knife systems, Piper that haven't seen enough of, seen quite a bit of Libre. I'm not claiming to know it, understand what I'm seeing though, even though I haven't like officially took a quote unquote class. But Medusa is by far the most direct system that I've ever been exposed to of all the knife systems I've done. Atienza, Seok, Anasano Blend, Veneer, KI, Lameco, I mean, Amok. I mean, it is just like boom. I mean, it's of course Piper does, me. Well, we'll get to that. But anyway, the most direct system. The one thing Medusa do is that reactionary gap. Like if you think about it, what is it taking away from the guy? The reactionary gap, their ability you're taking that away, putting him behind. I mean, think about it. You're shocking him right there to that latch, and now you're going. So if you don't even know what's going on, and you're not even, I mean, your reaction is going to be so far behind the curve that you're done. You know what I mean? One of the things that Medusa did for me and all that, and kind of further compounded what I get to my students, and Jay could attest this in level 3. And in fact, the first drill we do, how did they get there? Like, why are you letting somebody that you don't know even get that close? I'm not talking ambush. Somebody jumps out of a bush, you're just gonna have to do the best you can. You know what I mean? But I'm talking about like not just because I'm telling you right now, because of Medusa and Piper. You know what I mean? Not freaking letting anybody get in that close because it just of like how far behind you're going to be on the reactionary gap. In other words, Medusa and Piper, they take away your recovery. Think about it. Like your ability to recover is going to be so compromised that you're not going to get your, period. And so that's when I look at Medusa. I think it's the quintessential of taking the reactionary gap, negating it from you, and your ability to recover in that. And stressing my students what I just mentioned.
Can I piggyback off that?
Yeah, please do.
So another thing with that is this, right? Most criminals, if they're approaching you, they've probably done it before. They already have in their mind what is supposed to take place, what's going to transpire, right? So when you do something that's unexpected, it throws them off. Yeah. Right? See, that's that Medusa, that brutality, because they're not expecting that. Remember, they attacked you, they came at you, they chose you because they thought you were a sheep, right? Until you show them you're a wolf. By the time they realize you're a wolf, though, and they're the sheep, it's already too late. You've already maximized on the fact that it was unexpected. Then when you hit somebody in the side of the head like that, especially somebody who wasn't expecting it, that flash goes off. And by the time they recover their sense, you already got them hooked and you stab him, right? So that's another thing. Medusa basically takes the criminal strategy and turns it against him, right? That's like the most beautiful thing about the whole thing for me. What the criminal is expecting to do to you ends up getting done to him, as opposed to the other way around, right?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. Just putting behind the curve and basically eliminating your recovery or making it so difficult to recover, Yeah, no argument here. Guillaume. I don't necessarily agree with that based on that. Lloyd, to be completely transparent here with Lloyd, that I had suggested some things, seatbelting and stuff like that, or in there, and he wasn't sure about incorporating it and all that from a suggestive point of view. So, as far as the latching and Piper under Lloyd's faction, um, they didn't give it to me. The only thing Lloyd said, sometimes they would pull the shirt over the guy's head. Sometimes they would grab the belt line, but nothing in the nature of collar ties, overhooks, underhooks, unless that was a course or a session that I didn't attend. But so I'm not sure on that. Any rate, okay. So we kind of Medusa. I'm just thinking if I forgot anything, but I think you guys covered it incredibly well. All right. Piper. So, Guru J. Piper.
Yeah, like we're talking about earlier, I think Piper is an amazing system. I think what Nigel February put together, I think is so radically different, compared to, at least what I learned up to this point in time. The the whole blending of the boxing, the silat, the the Zuni stick fighting, the Zulu stick fighting. It makes for something that was so different that it was a hard transition for me into even learning the basics of it. But to your guys' point, it's an amazing compliment. And I think the more you get exposed to it, the more you realize that the the silat aspects of it are a lot more pronounced in it than at least I first realized when I was exposed to it. The off balancing. The thing that I like about it too is um, the smuggling, the misdirection, the ability to use the knife. This is kind of interesting, guys. Right? Um, there's there's a school of thought that tells you, you need, if, as an example, with Major Quarrel as an example, you don't want to be putting the knife in a position where you could potentially be cutting yourself. Maybe. I think that I'm of the mind that if you practice a technique and you make it sort of a reflexive, type of response, you can get to a point where you can manage the knife in a very safe fashion. And I think that's what Piper has done. It's taken a lot of the techniques and it hasn't lost the brutality and the directness of Medusa, but there's so much nuances and intricacies built in from all of the base systems. I honestly think it's a complete system end to end. And for me, it's like, with you guys, I'm just kind of scratching the surface of it. I think it's a really amazing complement to everything that we're learning from in FMA too. So anyway, just my thoughts, guys.
No. Ken Piper.
So first, I love the system. Is when I first saw it, I thought the guy was doing 52 blocks with a knife. They're so similar with the movements, right? If we look at it as a spectrum, right, and at the one end we have, and I'm talking about as far as criminal violence is concerned, at the one end you have Medusa, and at the other end you have Piper, right? Medusa is how criminals ambush. Piper is what happens when you get two dudes and it's like, yo, we're gonna have a knife fight or whatever the case to avoid a bigger war. And this is where the skill set comes in, right? Because now the ambush is not gonna work, right? Or at least not the direct ambush. And I want to circle around back to that later on when we start talking about the drills, right? But that whole, being able to parry the knife and the tactics, the distractions, and all of that stuff there, that works great, man. Right? I love, like I said, I love the system. And there's so much. I had a conversation with, through text with Nigel February, and we were talking about how the two systems, 52 and Medusa, are so similar. I'm not Medusa, 52 and Piper are so similar that there's like a shared Marshall DNA there, right?
I would
Because
agree.
they're on two different sides of the world, and you got they're pretty much the same fight, right? So there's a little added stuff in it. I think it's an awesome system. What I've managed to learn of it thus far.
Hey, Professor, can I interject? I wanted to actually reinforce what Professor's saying. When I started learning 52 from him, that's when I felt that my Piper techniques got better. I can't agree with you more, Professor. There is like a DNA overlap between Piper and 52. And it was a lot of your teachings that helped to kind of crystallize even the Piper approaches for me. It's such a nice compliment, sir.
Yeah. Nice. Piper. So, yes, I'll give you my take on Piper and how in that. Obviously, I've mentioned it already enough times. I would say tactic-based system. The offense is the defense. It's coming from a criminal element based on criminal tactics, therefore used for robberies, extortion, and all that, and stuff of that nature. Hence why it's being used this very day. So I don't see anything getting lost in translation yet, and hopefully that'll never happen. As far as wearing down, there's an intentional off balancing in Piper when you are landing in the person coming in like that. Not only to you're coming to stabbing, but that intentional off balancing to disrupt their balance, their core, thus making it easy to basically avalanche. So it's one thing why they're coming heavily reverse grip, stabbing, and all that. But again, one of the things that resonate that intentional off balancing, and then using them to recover balance. So there's a lot of balancing and stuff like that. I think the use of distractions are incredible in there. And matter of fact, if you take their distractions, you can put it in any aspect of your training. I mean, empty hand. Think about it. If I'm like right here and I just and then go from there, the moment I distract your eyes, I snap. Whether it's a finger jab, whatever. I think distractions have an incredible place as far as a tactic. What else can I say on there? It's again the whole body movement, really how to move efficiently quicker by aligning your hip and shoulder, where you're not making full rotations of turning to go to a particular direction. I think Piper addresses that really well. The offhand use in Piper, I think, is really well explored and taught, and the applications and what you can do with it, not from distracting or defending, but hitting, pushing, manipulating, and I just think I think some FMA systems, to be quite honest, could make better use of their offhand, and I'm sure I'll get shelled for that, but I just do. I'm sorry. It goes far beyond of just checking or pinning. I think the offhand application, and just like Medusa, look at what the offhand does in Medusa. I'm there.
I'm sorry, Master Dean, can I interject, sir? So
Go ahead.
the thing that resonates for me with Piper is because you're in that close range, it negates a lot of the physical, benefits that somebody bigger, stronger, faster has, because you're in that close range. And the other thing that you made mention of was and this is what I think kind of clicked for me, was the use of the levers. The side lever in particular, as you're, leading with your shoulder, as an example, moving, changing levels, moving, around, the targeted opponent, right? But it's insanely effective. And for a smaller guy, being able to use the levers to attack the knees and the lower extremities of the opponent is an amazing thing. That's part of Piper too.
Yeah,
Can I interject?
please do.
like I'm looking at some of the comments.
Yeah, I got to catch up to them too.
So, all right. So with this shimmer, right? Because somebody was saying something about the shimmer, right? And now this is where I see that like that Piper Libre overlap, right?
Mm.
So as far as just standing there doing this with a knife, right? I don't see the focus in that. So first, coming from the criminal perspective, right? I want to end the fight as quickly as possible. Me just standing there doing this is not going to end the fight as quickly as possible, right?
Yeah.
Boom. However, it's that Piper Libre overlap, even a little bit of the FMA overlap. If the individual attacks or he has his hands up to guard, right? And I push his hand down and I come over, right? Now here's my tumbler, right? Boom. And I come over and I come across his eye, right? Boom. Now, whether I hit the eye or not, wherever I hit him at, right, it's going to cause a pain response, right? He flinches, whatever. All I need is the flinch. I don't need to kill him. I'm not expecting to kill him doing this, right? I just need him to react to that in a way that disrupts his structure, it disrupts his rhythm, and then I can take advantage of everything else from there, right? Boom. So if I move his hand, I come across his eye this way, whatever way, right? Boom. I'm here. I can't get the stab. I come across, boom, and now I can, boom. See? Using that offhand, boom, and then I can latch and boom. See? And this is all of them coming together, right? So I agree. I'm not going to stand there shimmering at my knife like this, but I can see where it can be used as an attack. If I come from the other side and I shimmer hand, again, attack the eye, under the eye, over the eye, in there. I just need you to flinch, right? That's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking for you to blind you or whatever the case, right? Because the reality is the eye is a small target. And if you're moving around, I'm probably not going to hit it, right? I just want to hit something to make you aware of the fact. I mean, we're human beings, right? If a sharp piece of metal touches our face, we're going to flinch back, right? So I just need that. I need you to flinch back so that I can now bully my way into your space, right? And do what I need to do to end this fight, right? So that's your tumbler, right? Boom, like we call it in 52 blocks stacking the deck, right? Boom, that's your shimmer right there, boom. And you can also use that shimmer as a stab, right? Boom, because now I'm not doing this, I'm here, boom. And it's right in the side of his neck, right? So, again, and these are the benefits, right, of some of those movements. It's, I can't remember, it might have been Jerry Hungay, right? He was talking about the drills in FMA, right? Particularly, right? And he was saying how people, because a lot of detractors will say, well, you know, the drills are too flowery and this, that, and third, whatever. And he's like, the drills are there to train timing, to train reflex, so on and such like that, right? The drills aren't fighting. In point of fact, Doug Marcaida had a video some years back where he was doing a seminar in France, and he had a guy come up and he's like, all right, so if we do this, this is a drill. And then he's like, now this would be fighting. The guy went to go do the drill, he brought the stick and boom, came across the dude where the guy's eye would be. It's like, that would be fighting, right? For everybody, anybody fighting with a knife, you want to end the fight as quickly as possible, right? Because the longer we stand there, the more opportunity you got to stab me. I don't want to get stabbed or cut. I want to cut you and stab you. And so even with a system like FMA, you got to figure these guys are fighting with real live blades. They're not going to go all that stuff with the drills is just to teach you what is possible in the context of this duel, of a duel, right? But it's no one intends for you to actually stand there and go through the whole hoover back and forth, right? Boom. So, and again, you can use all of these different things to help enhance your skills from everything else, right? So, you know, I just wanted to say that because I saw somebody say something about the shimmer in the tumbler.
All right, I'm gonna go more deeper on the shimmer because some folks are making comments here. Just to be quite honest. All right. Okay. All right. Let me back up a bit. Okay. Shimmering trains the hand to poke the side using the power of the hand. You have to be more clarity on that, Gillian. I'm not sure. It could be used for distracting. Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing on this shimmer, guys. I'm going to give you just what was taught to me, instilled to me by Lloyd, and so I'll do the best I can. So the shimmering develops. It's definitely what's first taught as far as distraction, intimidation. So if you were looking from like a guy wanted to rob you, you know, just doing this, give me your wallet, for instance. And again, I'm just giving you what Lloyd has shared for me based on what he's seen and et cetera, et cetera. The other thing shimmer is done is to generate momentum. If I'm doing this here, I'm generating momentum. So off this momentum, boom, I can flick, I can pick. So generation of momentum, okay, goes way beyond just as far as distraction. Now, much as some of the comments come here, if I'm just doing a shimmering and I'm thinking this is going to end the night, yes, I'm not saying that, and I don't want to get that misconstrued. But off this, the momentum from this, what Ken was talking about is flicks. I'm over here. I get you a moment just to watch it. Let's just say I just shimmer for 2 seconds to get your eyes over here, and I went into a flick, and that went here. That's a tactic why the shimmer is done. Okay, intimidation, distraction, and generating momentum, and off there. So off this momentum, you're getting speed, acceleration to there and coming in, depending on what you're doing as far as the tactics, flicks, picks, or whatever. So hopefully that helps folks that are watching kind of shimmering.
Yeah, just to add to what you're saying, Master Dean, I mean, that was one of the, foundational learnings that Guro Burton had imparted too, right? You don't want to take a knife from a static, non-motion state.
And Brian just said intimidation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, it comes more just sitting there, in that by itself. I would agree with some of the comments. If you were just staying there just doing this, pretty silly. I get it, and I can get why it can be construed as, well, why would I do this? Look at it from here. I'm just getting you to look over here into a flick to there. Now, as Ken mentioned, now I'm coming behind that flick. Here comes the avalanche, right? The big bombs, if you will.
One more thing, Master Dean, from the shimmer, what we've been actually playing with in sparring and technique is using it sort of as a clearing method. So from the shimmer, clear and then come in.
Yeah. Again, I'm not saying the shimmer is the best thing I've ever seen. I think it's the thing, man. And here's the thing, why? Because you could do Piper without having a shimmering ring. So it's far from the most important thing in Piper and that. However, though, it has a place, tactically speaking, and I just think, let me just see here, guys. I'm just trying to catch up with the comments. Most welcome, Joel. Thanks for jumping in. My school thought they don't want the other guy to know I have a knife, but I get the definitely intimidation factor. Matter of fact, Lloyd even went as far as to say in Cape Town Flats, the guys would just have him out there just doing this. No, I mean, not wanting to attack anybody, letting other people know that, quote unquote, I'm not the guy. Again, guys, I'm giving you what Lloyd's shared with me. And I just, I want that, not to get, that's my wife. The shimmering annoys her. Bear with me, guys. I'm just catching up on the comments here. Time and place for everything. Much absolutely on me. Thanks for jumping in too. Oh, good heavens. All right. Okay. Professor Ken, complimentary. So you kind of got a nice toolbox going there. You've a little from there, a little from there, a little from there. So why don't you go into the complementary aspect of all these systems?
All right. So if again we take a drill like Hubert, right? We all know it's 1, 2, 3, and then an attack. And so now you're learning that. Now, if I want to take that and apply it with the Medusa, right? So when the attack comes in, when I do that first one, and here I rush in, right? Boom. That's my rush in to get his arm to go across his body, right? Boom. And now I can get my attack off, get my latch off, get my shock off, right? Boom. If I go 1, 2, right? Boom, 1, 2, and then on the 3, and it's kind of answering Brett's question, right, about the pinch grip. right?
Okay,
When I get
thank
to
you.
that
I got
three,
it down here.
right, I'm using the 3, and I push the hand across. Like, actually, let me see something here. Bob, right? So if I'm doing Hoover with Bob, right? And we go 1, 2, and I'm 3, right? So now I'm coming in, and I'm here, right? And I can stab, right? Boom. Once I get to this point right here, I can grab him. He can't use this knife, and I can just stab him up, right? See? So now I'm taking an FMA drill and applying it with the Medusa, right? Boom. We take that same drill, right? Boom, and hit to the eye, right? Now that's the Piper / Libre, right? And that's also my shock, though, because once I get here, boom, that's my shock. Now I'm here. I got my latch on his neck. I'm pretty much behind him, right? I can stab, right? See, this is how they come together, man, right? And that's why I love the Hoover drill a lot. That's probably one of my favorite drills ever because you can apply it in so many ways across the board, right? Again, it's cool to want to be first, but you're not going to always be first. The other guy just might be a little bit faster. Like, you know, I just turned 50. I'm not as fast as I was back in the day, right? I don't know for sure that I'm gonna get to my knife before he gets to his. And the reality is, 9 times out of 10, if a dude is approaching you to rob you, his weapon is already out, right? So if you need to get to your weapon, right? Boom, that Hoover, boom. Because when I'm here, now I can index my weapon, right? Boom. Now I got my knife. Now I can go into everything else. It provides me the opportunity and it shows me how to create the space I need to get to my knife. Because, if a guy came up to me like this and told me, give me your money, I'd probably laugh at him, right? Because you're not going to rob me with your finger. And you didn't show me the weapon. So, and most criminals realize that, right? So when they approach you, whatever weapon they have is going to be out.
Yeah.
So that means you're not first, right? So when you can't be first, be next, right? So I want to make sure that when I'm next, he don't get another go. We're not going to go back and forth. You was first, I'm next, and you're not going to get a go after I'm next, right? Boom. And that Hoover drill, you can use it to reinforce, or even like the Pak Sao drill from Wing Chun, right?
Yeah.
We know this is Pak Sao drill, right? We take that and we know that this is Pak Da, right? So he has his knife out, he goes to attack. I Pak Da, boom! Oh, my God. I got a little excited there. Right? But I do Pak Sao, I come and I stab, right? And I can grab him and I can stab, right? So you see, all of these things work together. And I'm gonna have to pick those up after the fact. But
yeah.
But you see what I'm saying?
I like that. I think there's absolutely great stuff to extract from FMA that you, as again, I like to use the word platform, that you can create a platform on to maybe better, exemplify a tactic that you're trying to get across or a series of tactics that, you know what I mean? And I think FMA is probably the best to pull from because they have these existing platforms and drills, and there. So yeah, I like that far as the complementary aspect, 100%. Guru J, what do you think?
Yeah, again, agree with everything Professor's saying. For me, it was always sort of two things that kind of drove me, right? The grounding in this whole JKD approach to things, right? Go and find things that work for you, and then bring it into your own self-expression. The one thing though that was also ingrained in me from early on was as you learn these different systems, you want to maintain the integrity of the system, so you don't go to a blend right away. You lose, I think, a lot of the
study the system for
you lose the integrity and the value of the system itself. So you need to actually preserve that, right? But it all comes down secondarily for me to ranges. So, as an example, a lot of the Battlefield Kali and Illustrissimo stuff at Largo range works for me. But then there's a preference for me, right? If you look at long range, middle range, close range, clinch, and ground, I don't want to go to the ground because I'm going to be overwhelmed. I don't want to be in middle range for obvious reasons. So for me, it's usually I'm at long range so I can actually get out of dodge, or I want to get into clinch so that I can actually negate the physical, strengths of the opponent, right? So there's overlap in all of that, right? So to your guys' point, the Piper aspects in close range, the latch and the Medusa piece, the dog brother aspects of the entries in. That's another piece that we didn't cover that I think that's really critical in the whole continuum of the learning process. It's the entries, right? Entries and the exits, but more so the entries to get to latch, right? So there's a whole different set of focus drills and sparring, applications that we introduce just for entries, right, to make that more complete. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that every aspect of of engaging at these different ranges, you can draw from the different aspects of FMA or Medusa or Piper or Libre, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, definitely before you blend, like, get a good solid foundation in
Right.
each and every one of them and all that. So, which is what I did with Late Tech, you know what I mean? I just didn't like, oh, I'm gonna
Yeah.
color this
There you
up,
go.
and I spend a week here and I spend 2 weeks over here, and probably wouldn't be the best system in there. As far as how they complement one another. I think what you're going to extract for individually speaking to complement, I think a lot is going to be based on your past experience, your stature, like you were just mentioning, Jay. I mean, there's certain things you're not going to extract if they're kind of favor a bigger person or for instance, or what have you, whereas in that, I mean, Ken's experience probably going to sing a different tune as far as what he's going to look for and put in there. You know what I mean? I think that's just normal. You know what I mean? Things obviously certain things resonate, and plus, what do you like? You know what I mean? We all know it, man. If you really like something, well, you're probably bringing it along with you. You know what I mean? Uh, you know what I mean? So yeah, this has been awesome. Anything I might have missed, Ken? Anything you want to touch upon I might have missed or anything?
Um, Not necessarily. Like I said, the only thing is actually just one thing, right? And so, because I know that there was some comments about uh, a lot of useless movement in Piper, right? So now I don't necessarily agree with that if you look at it from a certain point of view. But if let's say for the sake of argument, a person felt that way, that would be Libre would be like a less involved Piper, right? It has a lot of the
Mm,
same tactics, right? But it's more simple. So Libre is to Piper what Medusa is to FMA, right? Boom, straightforward. With Libre, there's no shimmer. There's just right. You attack, boom, palm in, and then your next stab, right? Get around behind the guy, boom. Scott Babb has a saying like, no one expects to get stabbed in the back when you're standing in front of him, right? Boom. So you want to try to position yourself so you can stab him in the back, right? Go from being in front of him and around to the side so you can stab him in the back, right? So you need that whole distraction, boom, 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 right? Just a 1, 2, 3, bam, and you're there, right? So for those who think that, as far as with Piper, unnecessary movement, but you're looking for something along those lines, because Libre 2 is also based a lot on criminal, how criminals attack, how criminals engage or utilize weapons,
mm.
right? So that's another part of the crossover and the parallels between them, right? That overlap.
That's a good way of putting it. Like Libre is like I don't want to see like a good prerequisite for Piper, but if you didn't do Piper, the next best thing to do would be Libre based on what I've seen as far as videos and what have you. You know what I mean? if I wasn't so deep in FMA and Piper, I probably would go do Libre. You know what I mean? But having vested time in Piper and obviously time in FMA, I just never looked at Libre as an option. I'm not putting it down. Nothing of the sort. But had I not gone as deep in Piper and all that, I probably would look at Libre. You know what I mean? As a viable option. You know what I mean? To get exposed to, I guess, Piper. Yeah, that was well put. Awesome. Any final thoughts, Guru J?
No, just to kind of riff on what you're talking about there with Libre too. For me, it was always sort of the Trinity, right? Piper, Medusa, and Libre. The thing I really would want to learn more, with Libre is the targeting, like you were speaking to, Professor Ken. And I like the fact that the system actually has a really comprehensive, hammer grip and ice pick grip set of components to it. So I think that, in light of what we are speaking to earlier, um, having, being able to actually pick and choose what works for your own personal self-expression is critical. I don't think there's any good or bad in any of the systems. It's
Absolutely.
just what works for you, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it behooves the person to look at all of them actually, and especially if here's the thing too. If you're teaching edge weapons,
Yeah.
more importantly, you're teaching the defense from them. Wouldn't you want, as a teacher, wouldn't you want to expose yourself to anything humanly possible to give the best to your students, or to make sure that like they at least know what's out there potentially in that? So that's kind of where what gives me direction as far as looking at these different systems. I look at, God forbid, what if I ran into this? Like from a defensive aspect, you know what I mean? And of course, to fully understand the defensive aspect, well, don't you need to understand the offense of that particular system and what they're addressing before you can defend against it, or even come up with attempts to defend against it? Which, of course, in my opinion, not let anybody get that close humanly possible.
And to your point, though, Master Dean, what works for you at 6 feet versus what works for
mm,
a woman at 5'1" is not going to be the same thing.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, is the next thing I would look at. Right,
Yeah,
too.
but having that breadth um, of tools in your tool belt so that you can actually impart those learnings to whatever your students' specific needs are.
Yeah,
That's really critical too, right?
I agree. And so, in other words, like making it, making it where like you have enough content there. So, right, it's not one size fit all, so to speak, right?
Exactly, sir. Yeah.
And awesome. But hey, guys, this has been really enjoyable. I'm glad we did this. The comments, there were a ton of them, man. So I think I made the right choice choosing you two guys. So.
Scraping the bottom
And
of the barrel.
no,
Yeah,
no,
man.
no. Matter
Uh,
of fact, yeah. So awesome, awesome. And yeah, Ken, definitely want to get back with you, man. Just let me know what works for you next week or whatever.
all
Um,
right, sounds good to me, brother.
yeah, absolutely. I was really enjoying it. But hey, well, you guys have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and of course, I'm assuming you guys are off tomorrow or the next or what have you. But enjoy those days as well, man. You know. Uh,
Hey, Professor, I'll give you a call later, sir, just to make sure we're
All
good.
right,
yeah,
all right, sounds good.
awesome guys.
Okay. Thanks,
All
guys.
All right, you guys
right,
take
Jay,
care.
I'll talk to you. Dean,
Yeah, definitely. Please do. Yeah,
all right.
absolutely. All right,
Thank
guys. You
you.
guys take
I
care.
appreciate you.
I appreciate you both, actually.
All right.
All
Bye,
right.
guys.
Be good. Be good. All right, that wraps up episode 424. Who is next? July's list just came out. I don't necessarily have the order though. Who's next? I can tell you there will be another episode. Um, But I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, no, thank you, Joel. Thank you guys for jumping in and watching. And Ryan's back on Facebook. All right, just realized that. Um, yeah, so I'm looking right here. Got Molly Powell's coming back on the 4th week. He's got something to promote. That's always interesting when Molly Powell comes on. What else? And then we got Dog Brother 3rd week coming on. Canada. They're having the Canada gathering coming up, so we're covering that. Min. Chopstick Dog. Min, he's coming on. That should be fun. He's a good guy. And there's also, who else? Where is my list? Oh, they're trying to get Mike Raymond on. I think he's going to be coming on too. So that should be fun. Talking to him about some different things in there. Yeah, but check out July's. It's some of the names are escaping me, like who's coming on. But yeah, definitely check out the pin list as far as July is concerned. But yeah, a couple theme episodes, and I know definitely some guests coming on as well. Terrell Richardson, there's somebody. He's coming on. I forget the style he does, but he'll be on. And there, that should be fun. Seems like a good guy as well. Master Velez might be coming on. I'm going to solidify that with Eugene Samuel. Catherine, a female guest, coming on. I got to get a date with her. And now some of the names are coming back to Instructor Conrad is coming on, who I'm hopefully going to be seeing in New York City very soon and shortly. And I think that's about it, though. Instructor Conrad, Catherine, Master Velez, and the folks I already mentioned before are coming on. But yeah, should be good. All right, folks. Thank you as always for watching, tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time on, which should be some point during the week. I'll definitely post it though. All right. Have a good rest of your day.